Greetings and welcome to Ghost Stories of Washington, Chapter 2, The Spirit's Inn, Part 1, Manresa Manifestations. Chapter 2, The Spirit's Inn. Hotels, motels, inns, and restaurants often serve as homes away from home. It is therefore fitting that many of these establishments are also home to ghosts. As the following stories demonstrate, these presences, like ghosts everywhere, can range from barely noticeable to horrifyingly conspicuous. So our first story in this chapter is Manresa Manifestations. Palatial, elegant, luxurious. Those are just a few of the adjectives with great justification have been used to describe the Port Townsend Hotel known as Manresa Castle. Of course, haunted is another word that's frequently applied because many believe that two ghosts inhabit the more than 100-year-old building. To be fair, however, it should be noted that there are other people, some with intimate knowledge of the castle, who insist that there is no validity to any of the spooky stories associated with the place, that such tales are only foolish rumors. Perhaps an examination of the facts that make up the hotel's history can help us decide whether to believe all of the ghost stories, some of them, or none of them. Charles Eisenbice, Port Townsend's first mayor, built the 30-room, four-story mansion, which he called Eisenbice Castle, as a home for his family and a monument to his considerable financial success. Eisenbice had immigrated from Prussia in 1856. In 1865, he married fellow Prussian immigrant Elizabeth Berghauser. They had 4 children together before Elizabeth died in 1880. 2 years later, the increasingly wealthy man married again. Eisenbice fathered another 4 children with his second wife, Kate. He died in 1902 at the age of 70. His family continued to own the palatial estate until the late 20s, when it was purchased by an order of Jesuit priests. These new owners added 20 rooms to the former family home to make it more suitable for their intended purpose as a training facility for priests. They also renamed the place Manresa Hall, in recognition of the area in Spain from which their founder, St. Ignatius, had been born. The priests occupied the enormous building until 1968, when they relocated to Seattle. From then until now, the building has seen 3 owners and 2 ghosts. In 1968, when Joshua and Dolly Norris bought the old place, it was seriously run down and considered to be a real estate white elephant. However, the Norris couple was convinced that if the castle were carefully restored, the once proud building could be a spectacular inn. They were right. By 1973, after considerable effort and expense, first from the Norrises and then from subsequent owners Ron and Carol Smith, the ornate woodwork, exquisite carved mantels, and hand-printed wall coverings had been reclaimed. Manresa Castle, renamed to honor the building's 2 previous incarnations, had become a study in elegance. Both the Norrises and the Smiths can be counted among those who disbelieved the ghosts' stories concerning the castle. There is no ghost, Dolly Norris once stated flatly. The Smiths, after 17 years in residency, echo her sentiment. Even Roger O'Connor, the hotel's general manager since 1991, admits that he has never experienced anything out of the ordinary. O'Connor does, however, offer a possible explanation. Perhaps I'm just not susceptible to this type of activity. These opinions come from highly credible people with undeniably intimate and long-term knowledge of the place. There are others, however, who have made equally strong and compelling statements to the contrary, people who have also formed their impressions from personal experience, and have come to the firm conclusion that Manresa Castle is haunted by a pair of ghosts, one male and one female. The male presence is believed to be the ghost of an anguished priest who hanged himself in the attic when the building served as a Jesuit school and retreat. Film crews from the television show Sightings went to a great deal of trouble to dramatize the priest's demise. Interestingly, however, there is no record to prove that any such suicide ever occurred. The female presence may have also ended her life by her own hand. Her name is Kate. Although some folks feel she is the former First Lady of the castle, others say that the Kate whose spirit wanders the haunted halls was a young Englishwoman, and the identical name is merely a coincidence. The English Kate was staying at the castle in 1921, waiting for her fiancé to join her, when she learned that he had been lost at sea. Crazed with grief, Kate threw herself to her death from an upstairs window. One version of the legend is that shortly after her death, news reached the castle indicating that her young man was in fact alive and well. Reports attest that Kate's image can be seen as a shadow at the window, both during the night and at dawn. She apparently recognizable by her white gown and dark flowing hair. It may also be Kate's spirit that some of the overnight guests at the hotel have sensed, or her movements that they have detected. In addition to pronounced feelings of a presence when no one is visible, guests have reported finding dresser drawers inexplicably left open and personal possessions such as shoes moved just a bit by an unseen hand. The third floor, especially room 306, seemed to be the center of Kate's ghostly realm. Management had so many reports of supernatural encounters there that they actually placed a logbook in the room and invited guests to record any unusual activity they might have experienced and their reactions to it. The logbook is no longer left in the room because visitors occasionally became so unnerved while reading reports from previous guests that they asked to have their accommodation changed. When scanning through some of those notations, that reaction is easy to understand. Many of those who have taken the time to write in the book refer to hearing thumping sounds from upstairs, like someone was walking, even when they knew that there was no one on the floor above them. They also report detecting inexplicable odors, some pleasant, some not so pleasant. Other guests have been less specific, perhaps only because they were not able to capture with words the unfamiliar feelings provoked by being in a haunted room. For example, two women visiting overnight from Bremerton noted that the castle is a great place, but added that room 306 is kind of weird. The occupant of room 306 on September 14th, 1996 was staying at the castle while her daughter underwent emergency surgery at nearby Jefferson General Hospital. She acknowledged that even with all the worry, we had a great time, although the light kept going on and off. The guest was so convinced that one of the ghosts caused the disturbance that she closed by declaring, "We will be back to visit Kate again." On November 29, 1997, the mother of a family from Texas expressed disappointment at not having met Kate more directly. If we had known she was coming at midnight, we would have stayed up and waited for her arrival, she wrote. At least they got to hear Kate. We heard singing coming from the bathroom. It was a woman's voice singing a ghostly tune. Understandably curious, the woman got up to go to the bathroom and see what was in there. The door swung open eerily. There was a swish of cold air and a glowing light. Then all the lights came on. The author of the note and her family concluded it was either a ghost or the staff of the castle has a strange way of entertaining their guests. Either way, the writer did assure all who read her words that they'd had a wonderful time and would be sure to return. On June 1st, 1997, the occupants of room 306 penned the following words. As soon as the lights were turned on, odd sounds began: shuffling footsteps, branches breaking, wind blowing. A strange glow came from the painting on the wall. A ghostly figure seemed to materialize along the right path. It was a young girl who seemed to be signaling to us. We recognized her from the portrait in the lounge. She appeared to hover between the beds, lost and crying softly, and then she slowly vanished. Toward the end of August that same summer, a family staying in room 306 was treated to a special effect they probably thought they would only see in the movies. At 1 a.m., blue waves of color spread across the ceiling in a circular motion. Another couple experienced a considerably less enjoyable sensation. All night long they endured the sounds of moaning and bumping coming through the walls. They presumed that they were unwillingly eavesdropping on another couple's night of passion in the next room. The next morning, however, they discovered that they had been mistaken. The room next to them, the one from which all the noises had originated, had been unoccupied the entire time. One of the eeriest notations is also the most subtle. In the fall of 1997, someone who signed only as KK from New Mexico wrote around 3 a.m., I felt the sheets tighten around my feet, the sensation one feels when another person sits down on the foot of the bed. The visitor had the lightness of a cat. The only residents of room 306 to be utterly terrified by their encounter with one of the Manresa Castle spirits were two women who stayed there on October 22, 1989. One woman wrote in the middle of the night to the sight of an outreached arm extending from a hazy light which had formed at the end of her bed. Moments after the apparition faded, the startled woman lay in rapt stillness, listening to footsteps retreat down the empty corridor outside her room. The priest specter seems to be a darker presence than Kate's spirit. One Washington family makes a point to visit the castle regularly. They always bring their Ouija board in an attempt to communicate with the long-deceased Jesuit. In a dramatic, intimate revelation, the family asked the priest, through the Ouija board, for some references in the Bible to explain his presence. He led them to Psalm 101, which reads in part, "A perverse nature shall be absent from thee." The group took this to mean that it was a perverse or evil aspect of the priest's being that had led him to kill himself. Guests are not the only people who have detected the ghosts at the Manresa Castle. Manager Jill Tomasai explains that several of my maids won't ever clean on the third floor. after they heard a disembodied voice calling softly to them. Tomasi is quick to point out that the rooms do get cleaned. We have people who don't have any fears about that kind of thing. Events experienced by Castle employee Jim Flitton have left him with no doubt that the old place is haunted. Jim has been associated with Manresa Castle since 1991, and the number of paranormal encounters he's had while at work have been enough to convince him. These experiences have ranged from very vague ones, such as getting the heebie-jeebies when I'm alone here and it's quiet and all the lights are off, to incidents that are considerably more specific and dramatic. One night I was pulling the graveyard shift, Flitton recalls. It was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when people quit coming in and out of the doors. I turned out all the lights in the library, which is right across from the desk. I was just sitting here reading when I heard leaves rustling in the library. I was thinking, there's somebody in there? So I got the flashlight and my remote telephone, and I went into the library. We had a huge tree in there in a big pot, and it had just slowly fallen over. Watching something of that size lay itself down with a deliberate and controllable motion must have sent shivers up the poor man's spine. He couldn't have been completely surprised, however, because he has seen many other examples of supernatural activity and knows that some of the ghostly goings on actually happen according to a schedule. For example, Flitton knows to expect that at about 3 or 3:30 a.m. you can hear voices. It sounds like people are upstairs moving furniture around. Even if the rooms are unoccupied, it still happens just about every week. I've gone outside and looked up at the windows to see the lights are on, and they never are. It was while tending bar at Nick Gale that Nick Gale witnessed perhaps the most disturbing manifestation. A customer's glass shattered in his hand. The bartender recalled, "I thought it was interesting, but didn't pay any particular heed until the same thing happened to me, and I was the one holding the glass and inexplicably shattered into shards." Like General Manager Roger O'Connor, Nick Gale acknowledges that some people are more sensitive than others of these phenomena. Unlike O'Connor, though, Gale seems to be one of those more sensitive people. Tammy Headley was a confirmed skeptic until she worked as a housekeeper at the castle. She now agrees that the place is haunted. She, too, has seen an ordinary drinking glass fly from her hand and shatter. She also has sympathy for guests who report their room becoming too warm overnight because she has witnessed heater fans that turn on of their own accord. Room 306 has also treated Tammy to a unique lightning display. She recalled that even though the shades were pulled down, 2 bright flashes of light came from the door. Despite these unnerving incidents, the haunting hasn't frightened Tammy. She concluded, "Do you think there's someone there? It's her home. She's not trying to hurt anyone." During the summer of 1997, a new chef came to work at the castle. While he was getting settled into the area, management invited him to live in the hotel. One night, he was curious about the bright lights shining under the door to his room. He opened the door, looked out in the hallway, and found it dark and empty. Nick Gale described a further oddity at the former Manresa Hall. Every time I've gone up in the turret area itself, I just feel like I'm losing my equilibrium. I don't know, he said. I don't like it up there. I think there might be an energy vortex or something up there. This theory has since been confirmed by physics investigating the castle. And there are odd occurrences that can't be explained. Lights turn on and off, or for no apparent reason. Pictures come off the walls when no one is near them. And the distinct sounds of a person entering the ladies' room can be heard when no one is there. During a Christmas party in 1996, the grandfather clock in the hotel's library chimed in the wee hours of the morning. It had never, in anyone's memory, chimed before, and it has never chimed since. Finally, as Gale notes, there's always the old, you think you see something out of the corner of your eye, and then you look and there's nothing there syndrome. Manresa Castle definitely has all the signs of a haunted building, but if, as many reliable people have attested, Manresa Castle is not haunted, then how can we account for all the bizarre activities? The Philip experiment, which was conducted in Toronto, Canada, received international acclaim as groundbreaking research. Not only was it a remarkable paranormal study in its own rights, but the results may prove some insight into enigmas like the one in Port Townsend. The parapsychological experiment began when the members of the Toronto Psychic Society were called in to investigate a haunted house. The investigators had been told of a suicide in the house, and when they saw a hanging apparition, they wondered if their own expectations had not played an important role in their sighting. They then decided to see if they could create an entity where none had previously existed. The group of 8, as the participants called themselves, set about conceiving an entirely fictitious personality and placing him in both an era and a place. They determined completely arbitrarily that he would have been an aristocratic Englishman in the mid-1600s named Philip. They further decreed that he had lived a tragic life. The group then met regularly, meditating together in hope that their manifestation would appear. Patterning the method of receiving other worldly messages after that used in Victorian England, they placed in their midst a small table through which they hoped the ghost would communicate. Unlike the Victorian seances, the group kept the room brightly lit and insisted that an impartial observer be present. Eventually, the table began to vibrate. This, they suspected, was their first indication that a supernatural being was present. They informed the entity that they wished to ask it some questions. The force was to respond with one knock of the table leg on the floor for a yes answer, and 2 knocks to indicate a negative reply. After a few sessions like this, something uncanny happened. The table, or if you prefer, the spirit of Philip, communicated through the table, developing a distinct personality. When it was happy, the table would reply enthusiastically, actually moving energetically around the room. When it didn't answer to a question, there was scratching sounds. If it wasn't sure of an answer, the reply would be decidedly hesitant series of knocks. These meetings confirmed other many months. All of the members of the original assembly attended whenever they could make time to do so. Inevitably, however, there were evenings when one or more of the group of 8 found it necessary to be absent. Interestingly, the personality of Philip changed each time the composition of the group changed. Occasionally, Philip's antics were not confined to the table. He would turn lights on and off and move light and things about. As with the enigma at Manresa Castle, word of the Philip experiment leaked out to the media, and the media came swooping in stark contrast to the priest who would not make himself known to the sightings crew. Philip acted like a real ham when the group of 8 took the table to a television studio for a taping. One of the group's participants told me we had a really fun time with the cameraman, as they could not keep up with where the table was gone. On other occasions, the table or Philip chased after skeptical television personalities and even a room full of academics. The group of 8 had simply willed a presence into being. They had created a ghost. Is it possible that as some maintain, the Manresa Castle was not haunted prior to its present ownership, but that it's legitimately haunted now? Could it be haunted by 2 spirits brought to life through the power of human thought and will? This theory may possibly explain the strongly contradictory opinions about the presence of both Kate's and the priest's ghosts. Nothing, however, seems likely to diminish the public interest stirred up by this reclaimed piece of Port Townsend history. Hopefully you enjoyed this reading, and I look forward to our next episode in the not-so-distant future. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and we will see you again in our next episode of Ghost Stories of Washington. Thank you, and have a great, spooky, scary night. Bye for now. Have a great day. We'll see y'all next time.